The man in the charcoal suit appeared at exactly 9:15 every Tuesday morning, and Natalie Lancaster had started setting her watch by him. She noticed him first in early September, when the maple trees lining Camden Street had just begun their slow transformation into autumn gold. He walked into petals and stems with the kind of quiet confidence that made her look up from the arrangement she was working on, hands still tangled in baby's breath and eucalyptus. He was tall, with dark hair that looked professionally styled but somehow still managed to fall slightly across his forehead in a way that seemed effortless. His eyes were a striking gray blue, and when they met hers, she felt something shift in her chest. "Good morning," she said, wiping her hands on her apron. "How can I help you?" He scanned the shop with an analytical gaze, taking in the buckets of fresh flowers, the cooler along the back wall, the vintage wooden counter where she stood. Then those eyes returned to her face. "A single rose, please, red." "Just one?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. Most customers came in for bouquets or arrangements, especially men in suits that expensive. "Just one." His voice was deep, pleasant. A slight smile played at the corner of his mouth. Natalie nodded and moved to the rose bucket, selecting the most perfect bloom she could find. The stem was long and straight, the petals still tightly furled at the center but opening beautifully at the edges. She wrapped it carefully in brown paper and tied it with twine, the way her boss misses. Chen had taught her. "That'll be $5, she said. He handed her a 20 and told her to keep the change. Before she could protest, he was gone, the bell above the door chiming his exit. The following Tuesday he came back. Same time, same request. A single red rose. By the third week, Natalie found herself watching the clock as 9:15 approached. She told herself it was just curiosity, nothing more. Mrs. Chen, who owned petals and stems and had been running it for 30 years, noticed her preening in the small mirror by the register. "Someone special coming in?" Mrs. Chen asked, her dark eyes twinkling with amusement. "No," Natalie said too quickly. "Just a regular customer." But he was becoming more than that, at least in her mind. She started preparing his rose in advance, selecting the best one from each delivery, making sure the wrapping was perfect. She learned that he liked it simple, no frills, just the flower and the paper and the twine. October arrived with a burst of cold rain. Natalie had been working at the flower shop for 2 years now, ever since she graduated from community college with a degree in horticulture. It wasn't glamorous work, and it certainly didn't pay well, but she loved it. Loved the smell of fresh flowers, the way arrangements came together like living art, the smiles on customers' faces when they picked up birthday bouquets or anniversary centerpieces. The man in the charcoal suit came every Tuesday without fail. Sometimes his suit was navy, sometimes black, but always impeccably tailored, always at 9:15. Always a single red rose. It was mid-October when he finally introduced himself. "I'm Quinn," he said as she handed him his rose. "Quinn Dawson." "Natalie Lancaster," she replied, feeling heat rise to her cheeks. "I figured it was time we actually knew each other's names, considering you've been coming in for over a month now." His smile widened. "I should have introduced myself sooner. That was rude of me." "No, it's fine, I just—" She paused, gathering courage. "Can I ask why? Why just one rose every week?" Quinn looked down at the flower in his hand, his expression becoming distant. "My mother loved roses, red ones specifically. She passed away 2 years ago, and I bring one to her grave every Tuesday." That was the day she died. Natalie felt her heart contract. "I'm so sorry." "Thank you." He met her eyes again, and she saw genuine grief there, but also something else. Warmth. "She would have liked you." She always said the best people were the ones who worked with their hands, who created beautiful things. After he left, Natalie stood behind the counter for a long moment, thinking about loss and love and the quiet ways people carried their grief. She thought about her own mother, still alive and well in Portland, who called every Sunday and complained about Natalie wasting her degree on a flower shop instead of getting a real job with benefits. The next Tuesday, Quinn arrived right on time. But this time, after she handed him the rose, he lingered. "How long have you worked here?" he asked. 2 years. "I love it, honestly. Every day is different. You're good at it. The arrangements in the window are stunning." She felt a flush of pride. "Thank you. Those are actually mine. Mrs. Chen lets me do the displays." They talked for 10 minutes, then 15. She learned he worked in finance, something involving international investments that she didn't entirely understand. He learned she had a small apartment 3 blocks away, a cat named Dandelion, and a tendency to burn toast because she always got distracted by something more interesting. When he finally left, Mrs. Chen emerged from the back room with a knowing look. "That one likes you," she said simply. "He's just being friendly." "Natalie, I've been in this business for 3 decades. I know what friendly looks like, and I know what interested looks like. That man is interested." Natalie wanted to believe her, but it seemed impossible. Men like Quinn Dawson didn't fall for girls like her. She lived paycheck to paycheck, had student loan debt that would take years to clear, and spent her days elbow-deep in flower stems and muddy water. He probably lived in one of those sleek downtown condos and dated women who wore designer dresses and knew which fork to use at fancy restaurants. But the following Tuesday he asked her to coffee. "There's a place 2 doors down," Quinn said, a hint of nervousness in his voice that made him seem more human, more real. "Would you want to grab a cup after you close today?" Natalie's heart hammered against her ribs. "I'd like that." 5:30. Perfect. She spent the rest of the day in a daze, nearly mixing up orders and accidentally putting lilies in an arrangement that was supposed to be all roses. Mrs. Chen sent her home early with a wink and instructions to fix her hair. The coffee shop was called The Grind, and it had mismatched furniture and local art on the walls. Quinn was already there when she arrived, sitting at a corner table with 2 steaming mugs in front of him. "I took a guess," he said, gesturing to one of the mugs. "Vanilla latte. But if you prefer something else." "That's perfect." She slid into the seat across from him, suddenly aware of how casual she looked in her jeans and sweater compared to his still immaculate suit. He must have come straight from work. They talked for 2 hours. She learned his mother had raised him alone after his father left when Quinn was 7. Learned he'd built his investment company from the ground up, working 80-hour weeks for years before it finally took off. Learned he loved old movies, terrible action films, and the way the city looked early in the morning before the crowds arrived. He learned she'd grown up in Portland with 2 younger brothers who were both now taller than her. Learned she'd wanted to be a botanist, but couldn't afford the 4-year degree. So she'd settled for the 2-year program and found happiness in the practical application of her knowledge. Learned she read romance novels without shame, made the best chocolate chip cookies in the world, and had a birthmark on her left shoulder blade shaped like a crescent moon. When they finally left the coffee shop, the sky was dark and the streetlights had flickered on. Quinn walked her home even though it was out of his way, and when they reached her building, he asked if he could see her again. "Friday," he suggested. "Dinner?" "Yes," she said, probably too eagerly, but she didn't care. Their first real date was at a small Italian restaurant in the Arts District. Quinn picked her up at 7, and when she opened her apartment door, she saw his expression change. She'd worn a simple blue dress and put actual effort into her makeup and hair, and the way he looked at her made her feel beautiful. Dinner was easy, comfortable. They shared bruschetta and argued playfully about whether pineapple belonged on pizza. He told her about the deal he was working on, something involving a manufacturing company in Germany. She told him about the wedding arrangements she was preparing for that weekend, a huge order that would take her and Mrs. Chen 2 full days to complete. "You ever want to own your own shop?" Quinn asked. Natalie sighed. "Someday maybe, but the startup costs are enormous and I'm still paying off school loans. Mrs. Chen has been amazing, though. She's teaching me everything about running the business, not just the flower arrangements. She sounds like a good person to work for." "The best. She's like a second mother, honestly." After dinner, they walked along the riverfront. November had arrived with a bitter wind, and Natalie shivered despite her coat. Quinn noticed immediately and shrugged off his jacket, draping it over her shoulders. It smelled like him, something clean and masculine with a hint of cedar. "Thank you," she murmured. "Can't have you freezing." He smiled down at her, and in that moment, with the city lights reflecting off the water and his jacket warm around her shoulders, Natalie realized she was falling for him. They started seeing each other regularly after that. Quinn still came to the flower shop every Tuesday for his mother's rose, but now he'd stay longer, helping her sweep up fallen petals or carrying heavy buckets of water. He took her to museums and movies, to hole-in-the-wall restaurants and food truck festivals. She introduced him to her favorite bookstore and the park where she liked to sketch flowers in her journal. It was 3 weeks into dating when she finally asked the question that had been nagging at her. "Quinn, what exactly do you do? I mean, I know you work in finance, but—" They were in his car driving back from a movie. He was quiet for a moment, hands steady on the wheel. "I run an investment firm," he said carefully. "We manage assets for high net worth individuals and institutions." "It's doing well." "How well?" Another pause. "Very well." She turned to look at him. "Quinn," he exhaled. "I'm wealthy, Natalie, very wealthy. I didn't tell you because I wanted you to get to know me first, not my bank account." Her mind raced. "How wealthy are we talking?" "The firm manages about $40 billion in assets. My personal net worth is somewhere around $3 billion, give or take." Natalie felt the air leave her lungs. "Billion with a B." "Yes." "You're a billionaire." "Yes." She sat back in her seat, processing. It explained the suits, the quiet confidence, the way he never seemed to worry about prices at restaurants, but it also created a chasm between them that she hadn't fully recognized before. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked quietly. "Would you have agreed to coffee if you'd known?" She thought about it honestly. "I don't know, maybe not. I would have assumed you were out of my league." "That's exactly why I didn't tell you." He pulled the car over to the side of the road and turned to face her. "Natalie, I like you, really like you. And for the first time in years, someone is spending time with me because they enjoy my company, not because they want access to my money or my connections. Can you understand that?" She could. She thought about all their conversations, the easy laughter, the way he listened when she talked about her day. None of that had anything to do with money. "I understand," she said finally. "But this changes things, Quinn. Your world and mine are completely different. They don't have to be. I'm still the same person who comes in every Tuesday for a rose. Still the same guy who can't cook to save his life and thinks your cat is plotting my demise." That made her laugh despite herself. Dandelion had indeed taken an instant dislike to Quinn, hissing every time he entered the apartment. "Dandelion doesn't trust easily. Neither do I." His voice was serious now. "But I trust you, Natalie, and I'm hoping you can trust me too." She reached across the console and took his hand. "I do." Their relationship deepened as winter set in. Quinn was patient with her adjustment to his world. When he invited her to a charity gala, he made sure she felt comfortable. introducing her to everyone as his girlfriend without any pretense or embarrassment. She wore a borrowed dress from her friend Sarah and felt completely out of place among the designer gowns, but Quinn never left her side, and his pride in her was evident. The event was held at a luxury hotel downtown, the kind of place Natalie had only seen in magazines. Crystal chandeliers hung from soaring ceilings, and the champagne flowed freely. She met investors and CEOs, socialites and old money families. Some were kind, others coolly polite, and a few looked at her like they couldn't quite figure out what she was doing there. "You're doing great," Quinn whispered in her ear during a lull in conversation. "I feel like an imposter. You're the most real person here." A woman approached them then, tall and elegant in a silver gown. She had the kind of beauty that seemed effortless, with long black hair and perfect features. "Quinn," she said warmly, "I didn't know you were seeing anyone." "Veronica." Quinn's voice was polite but cool. "This is my girlfriend, Natalie. Natalie, this is Veronica Hayes. We used to date." "Years ago," Veronica added, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. She turned her attention to Natalie. "What do you do, dear?" "I work at a flower shop." "How charming." The way she said it made it sound like anything but. Quinn always did have eclectic tastes. After she walked away, Natalie felt small. "She's beautiful." "She's calculating," Quinn corrected. "She's interested in status and appearances. We dated for 6 months, and I don't think she ever asked me a single real question about myself. She's nothing like you." "I'm not sure that's a compliment right now." He pulled her onto the dance floor as the band started playing something slow. "It's the highest compliment I can give. You see me, Natalie, not my bank account or my connections, just me." She softened in his arms, letting the music wash over them. "I do see you, and I really like what I see. Good, because I'm falling in love with you." The words hung in the air between them, huge and terrifying and wonderful. Natalie felt tears prick her eyes. "Quinn, you don't have to say it back. I just needed you to know." But she wanted to say it. The feeling had been building for weeks now, sneaking up on her in quiet moments, when he laughed at her terrible jokes, when he remembered how she took her coffee, when he held doors and listened to her stories and made her feel like the most important person in the world. "I'm falling for you too," she whispered. "It scares me, but I am." He kissed her then, soft and sweet, and she forgot about Veronica Hayes and designer gowns and the gulf between their tax brackets. All that mattered was this moment, this man, this feeling. December brought snow and the chaos of the holiday season. The flower shop was busier than ever, with orders for Christmas parties and New Year's arrangements flooding in. Natalie worked long hours, often staying late to finish orders. Quinn would show up with dinner, sitting on the counter and keeping her company while she worked. "You're good at this," he said one night, watching her create a centerpiece of white roses, pine branches, and silver ornaments. "It's just flowers. It's art. Don't diminish what you do." She paused, looking up at him. "You really believe that, don't you?" "Absolutely. You create beauty, Natalie. That's not nothing." On Christmas Eve, he took her to his penthouse for the first time. She'd been nervous about it, imagining something cold and sterile and intimidating. But while it was certainly luxurious, it also felt lived in. Books lined the shelves, a well-worn guitar sat in the corner, and framed photos of his mother dotted the mantel. "She was beautiful," Natalie said, studying a picture of a woman with Quinn's eyes and a warm smile. "She was everything." He came to stand beside her. "I wish you could have met her. Tell me about her." They sat on the couch, and Quinn told stories late into the night. His mother had been a nurse, working double shifts to support them. She'd taught him to play guitar, to cook scrambled eggs, to treat people with kindness regardless of their station in life. She'd been so proud when his company took off, but she'd never let the money change who she was. She'd kept working until the cancer made it impossible, insisting that she needed to help people. "She sounds amazing," Natalie said. "She would have loved you, would have said I was punching above my weight." Quinn Dawson, billionaire extraordinaire, punching above his weight with a flower shop girl. Every single day, he kissed her forehead. "Want to know what I got you for Christmas? It's not midnight yet." Close enough. He retrieved a small wrapped box from his bedroom. Natalie's stomach fluttered with nerves. She'd gotten him a vintage copy of his favorite movie, North by Northwest, which had seemed perfect until this moment when she realized it probably paled in comparison to whatever was in that box. "Open it," he urged. Inside was a delicate gold necklace with a small pendant shaped like a rose. It was beautiful and thoughtful and not ostentatiously expensive. "Quinn, it's perfect. I wanted you to have something that reminded you how we met. And before you worry, it's not some crazy expensive piece. I mean, it's nice, but I know you'd feel uncomfortable with something too extravagant." He knew her so well already. She fastened it around her neck, the pendant settling just above her heart. "I love it, and I love you." It was the first time she'd said it clearly, without qualifiers. Quinn's expression softened, and he pulled her close. "I love you too." They spent Christmas Day at her apartment, which was a fraction of the size of his penthouse, but felt cozy with twinkling lights and the small tree she'd decorated. She made her famous chocolate chip cookies, and they watched old movies and pretended the rest of the world didn't exist. January arrived with bitter cold and new challenges. Natalie's apartment building announced they were raising rent by 30%. She'd been struggling to make payments already, and this pushed it beyond her reach. When she told Quinn, fighting back tears of frustration, he immediately offered to help. "No," she said firmly, "I can't take your money. It's not about taking my money. I care about you and don't want you stressed about this. Quinn, if I let you pay my rent, what does that make me? My girlfriend who's facing a temporary financial difficulty? It makes me dependent on you, makes the power dynamic between us completely unbalanced." He was quiet for a moment. "What if you moved in with me?" She stared at him. "What? Move in with me? Not because of the rent situation, although that would solve the immediate problem, but because I want you there. I want to wake up next to you every morning. I want to come home to you every night. I want to argue about what to watch on TV and trip over your shoes in the hallway. Quinn, we've only been dating for 4 months. I know. And if it's too fast, we'll find another solution. But I mean it, Natalie. I love you and I want to build a life with you." She thought about it seriously. It was fast, maybe too fast. But she also couldn't deny how right it felt when they were together. How her apartment already felt empty on the nights he wasn't there. How she'd started thinking about their future in concrete terms, not just vague possibilities. "Okay," she said finally. "But I pay for groceries and utilities. I need to contribute something. Deal." Moving in together was an adjustment, but a happy one. Quinn cleared out space in his enormous closet for her modest wardrobe. She brought Dandelion, who finally warmed up to Quinn after he started giving her premium cat treats. They established routines, little rituals that became the fabric of their daily life. Morning coffee together before work. Tuesday roses for his mother, with Natalie sometimes joining him at the cemetery. Weekend mornings sleeping in and making breakfast together. Mrs. Chen noticed the change in Natalie, the glow of happiness that seemed to radiate from her. "You're in love," the older woman said simply one day in February. "I am. He's good to you, the best." "Then I'm happy for you, dear. You deserve someone who sees your worth." But not everyone was supportive. Natalie's mother had opinions, lots of them, when she learned about Quinn. "You moved in with a man after 4 months." Her mother's voice was shrill over the phone. Natalie, what are you thinking? I'm thinking I'm in love, Mom. Love doesn't pay bills. What happens when this ends and you're left with nothing? It's not going to end. Everyone thinks that. You need to protect yourself. Make sure he gives you something in writing, some kind of financial protection. The conversation left Natalie feeling sick. She tried to explain it to Quinn that night, struggling to articulate her mother's concerns without making it sound like she agreed with them. She thinks I'm taking advantage of you, she finished miserably. Or she thinks I'm taking advantage of you, Quinn countered. Natalie, I know this situation is complicated. I know my money creates an imbalance that makes you uncomfortable, but I would never use that against you. If you wanted to leave tomorrow, you could. No strings attached. I don't want to leave. Good. Because I'm not ready to let you go. Ever, if I'm being honest. Spring came slowly, the snow melting into rain before finally giving way to sunshine and cherry blossoms. Natalie turned 25 in April, and Quinn planned an entire day of surprises. Breakfast in bed, followed by a private tour of the botanical gardens, then dinner at the restaurant where they'd had their first date. But the real surprise came at the end of the night. I have one more gift, he said as they walked along the riverfront. Quinn, you've already done too much. It's not from me, technically. It's from my mother. She looked at him, confused. He led her to a bench and pulled out his phone, showing her a video. It was dated 3 years ago, and when he pressed play, a woman appeared on screen. Quinn's mother, thinner than in the photos but with the same warm eyes. Hello, she said to the camera. If you're watching this, it means my son has finally found someone he loves enough to share this with. Quinn, sweetheart, if she's watching this, then I'm gone, and I'm so sorry I can't meet her in person, but I want to tell her something important. The woman on the screen looked directly into the camera, as if she could see Natalie across time and space. Whoever you are, thank you for loving my son. He's a good man, but he doesn't always believe it. He thinks his worth is tied to his success, to his money, to what he can provide. Please help him understand that's not true. Love him for who he is, not what he has. And Quinn, love her the same way. Love her for her heart, her spirit, her laugh. Build something real together, something that would make me proud. The video ended, and Natalie realized she was crying. She recorded that before she died. Several of them, actually. Messages for different milestones in my life. This one was labeled for when you fall in love. His voice was thick with emotion. I wanted you to hear it, to know that even though she never met you, she would have approved. Natalie kissed him, tasting salt from her tears. I wish I could have known her. Me too. That night, lying in bed, Natalie thought about the future, about what it meant to love someone from a completely different world, about whether love was enough to bridge the gap between their lives. Quinn, she whispered in the darkness. Do you ever worry that we're too different? That eventually the money thing will become an issue? He rolled over to face her. Every single day. His honesty surprised her. Really? Of course. I worry that you'll wake up one morning and resent me for having money you don't. Or that you'll feel like you can't be your own person because everyone sees you as Quinn Dawson's girlfriend. Or that my world will slowly swallow your world until there's nothing left of the life you built before me. Those are very specific fears. I've had a lot of time to think about them. He reached out, brushing hair from her face. But then, I remember how you laugh at my terrible jokes, how you're not impressed by fancy restaurants or expensive gifts, how you love me because I bring you coffee when you're working late, not because I can buy you the building. And I think maybe we can make this work. I think so too. May brought an opportunity that both excited and terrified Natalie. Mrs. Chen called her into the office one afternoon, looking unusually serious. I'm getting old, the older woman said without preamble. My daughter wants me to retire, move to California to be near my grandchildren, and I've decided she's right. Natalie felt panic rise in her chest. "You're selling the shop. I want to sell it to you." The words hung in the air, enormous and impossible. "Mrs. Chen, I can't afford." "I know. But I also know you have resources now." She held up a hand before Natalie could protest. "Hear me out. This shop has been my life for 30 years. I don't want to sell it to some corporation that will turn it into a chain location. I want it to go to someone who loves it, who understands it." "That's you, Natalie. I can't ask Quinn for that kind of money." "I'm not suggesting you ask. I'm suggesting you make a business decision. If he's as good a man as I think he is, he'll understand the difference between a loan and a gift, between a business investment and a handout." That night, Natalie broached the subject with Quinn. She explained Mrs. Chen's offer, the price tag, her own conflicted feelings about using his money. "How much?" he asked. She told him. It was a significant sum to her, but probably pocket change to him. His expression didn't change. "What do you want to do?" "I want the shop. I love that place, Quinn. It's been my home for 2 years. And the idea of turning it into something of my own, building it up, maybe expanding someday, that's my dream." "Then let's make it happen. But I can't just take your money." "You're not taking it. We'll structure it as a proper business loan. You'll pay me back with interest if that makes you feel better. Or we could be partners, split ownership. Whatever makes you comfortable." "You don't want to own a flower shop." "No, but I want to invest in you, in your dreams." "Isn't that what people do when they love each other?" She thought about it from every angle. The power dynamic, the potential for resentment, the way it might look to others. But in the end, she came back to one simple truth. She trusted him. Trusted that he wasn't trying to control her or buy her. Trusted that he genuinely wanted to see her succeed. "Okay," she said finally, "but a loan, with a proper contract and everything, I'm going to pay you back. I have no doubt." The paperwork was drawn up by Quinn's lawyers, professional and legitimate. Natalie signed her name and became the owner of petals and stems. Mrs. Chen cried happy tears and promised to stay on for a few months to help with the transition. Owning the shop was harder than Natalie expected. There were supplies to order, employees to manage, taxes and permits, and 1,000 small details she'd never had to worry about before. Quinn helped where he could, using his business expertise to streamline processes and set up better accounting systems. But he never overstepped, never made her feel like it wasn't truly her business. The first time she made payroll entirely from the shop's profits, she celebrated by buying Quinn's favorite takeout. They ate it straight from the containers on the couch, Dandelion trying to steal pieces of chicken. "I'm proud of you," Quinn said. "It's just 1 month. It's the first month. The foundation everything else builds on. You should be proud too." She realized. For the first time in her life, she felt like she was building something that was truly hers. Not handed to her, not subsidized by someone else. Hers. Summer arrived with a heat wave that made the flower shop's cooler work overtime. Natalie hired 2 part-time employees, college students who needed summer work. She created new arrangements, marketed to new clients, and slowly grew the business. Quinn continued his Tuesday tradition, though now he could just take a rose from the cooler without paying. But he always insisted on paying, said it was good luck. It was a Tuesday in July when everything changed. Quinn came to the shop at his usual time, but instead of taking his rose and leaving, he lingered. Natalie was helping a customer, and he waited patiently, chatting with one of her employees. When the customer finally left, Quinn approached the counter with an expression she couldn't quite read. "I need more than just a rose today," he said. "Oh, what kind of arrangement? Something special, something that says..." He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "Something that says, 'Will you marry me?'" Natalie's heart stopped. "What?" He came around the counter, taking both her hands in his. I had this whole thing planned. Fancy restaurant, ring hidden in dessert, the works. But then I was walking here this morning thinking about how we met, and I realized this is where it needs to happen. Right here, where you were the first person in years to see me as just a man buying a flower for his mother. Where you fell in love with Quinn, not with the billionaire, Quinn. He dropped to one knee right there in the shop, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. Inside was a ring, elegant and beautiful without being ostentatious, a single diamond on a gold band. Natalie Lancaster, I love you more than I thought it was possible to love another person. You make me laugh. You make me want to be better. You make every day brighter just by being in it. Will you marry me? She was crying, she realized, happy tears streaming down her face. Yes. God, yes. He slipped the ring onto her finger and it fit perfectly. Then he stood and kissed her, deep and sweet, and she heard her employees cheering in the background. I love you, she whispered against his lips. I love you too. So much. They called their families that night. Natalie's mother was cautiously supportive, still worried but trying to be happy. Her brothers were excited, demanding to know when they could meet Quinn in person. Quinn's extended family, aunts and uncles and cousins he rarely saw, expressed varying degrees of surprise and pleasure. The engagement party was held at Quinn's penthouse, a compromise between Natalie's desire for something small and Quinn's large social circle. She invited her family, her friends, her employees. He invited business associates, old friends, people from his past. It was a strange mix, but somehow it worked. Natalie's mother cornered her in the kitchen at one point, glass of wine in hand. He really loves you, she said, sounding almost surprised. I told you he did. I know, but... Her mother struggled for words. I was worried he saw you as some kind of project, poor girl from humble beginnings that he could save. But watching him with you tonight, the way he looks at you... That's real. It is, Mom. Then I'm happy for you, sweetheart, truly. Planning the wedding was an exercise in compromise. Natalie wanted small and intimate. Quinn was willing to do whatever she wanted, but pointed out that he had business obligations, people who would be offended if they weren't invited. They settled on a medium-sized wedding at a historic garden venue, 200 guests, spring ceremony. Is this what you really want? Natalie asked one night, surrounded by invitation samples and seating charts. I want you. Everything else is just details. But your world is so much bigger than mine. Are you sure you're not going to wake up one day and wish you'd married someone from that world, someone who fits better? Quinn set down the invitation he'd been examining and pulled her into his lap. Listen to me carefully. I spent years in that world, dating women who fit perfectly into it. They knew the right things to say, the right people to impress, the right way to behave. And I was miserable. They never asked about my mother, never cared about the things that mattered to me. You fit me, Natalie. You fit my heart, my soul, my life. That's what matters. The wedding took place on a perfect April day, exactly 1 year after their first kiss. Cherry blossoms were in full bloom, and Natalie carried a bouquet of red roses, a nod to how they met. She wore a simple white dress, nothing too elaborate, and walked down the aisle to her father waiting to give her away. But what she saw at the end of that aisle made her breath catch. Quinn stood there in a perfectly tailored suit, his eyes locked on her with such love and devotion that she felt tears threaten. His best friend from college stood beside him as best man, and Sarah was her maid of honor, and everything was perfect. The ceremony was short and sweet. They'd written their own vows, and when it was Quinn's turn, his voice was thick with emotion. Natalie, you walked into my life on a random Tuesday morning and changed everything. You saw past the money and the status and the walls I'd built up. You saw me, just me, and decided I was worth loving. I promise to spend the rest of my life proving you were right. I promise to support your dreams, to challenge you when you need it, to comfort you when you hurt. I promise to buy a rose every Tuesday and to remember where we came from. I promise to love you with everything I have, for all the days of my life. Natalie's vows were simpler, but no less heartfelt. Quinn, you taught me that love doesn't care about balance sheets or tax brackets. You taught me that kindness and strength can exist in the same person. You taught me to dream bigger, to take risks, to believe in myself. I promise to be your partner in every sense of the word, to stand beside you, not behind you, to love you for who you are, not what you have, to build a life with you that would make your mother proud. I promise to love you forever. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Quinn kissed her like they were the only two people in the world. The crowd erupted in applause, and they walked back down the aisle together, hand in hand, ready to start their new life. The reception was a blur of dancing and laughter and champagne toasts. Natalie's brothers embarrassed her with stories from childhood. Quinn's college roommate told tales about his early business days, working out of a tiny apartment and eating ramen for dinner. Mrs. Chen gave a toast that made everyone cry, talking about the day Natalie first walked into her shop and how she'd known immediately that this girl was special. Late in the evening, when things were winding down, Quinn pulled Natalie onto the dance floor for one last dance. "Happy?" he asked. Deliriously. "Good, because I have one more surprise, Quinn. You've done enough. This one I think you'll appreciate." He spun her gently. "I set up a foundation in my mother's name. It provides grants to people who want to start small businesses but don't have access to traditional funding. I thought maybe you could help run it, use your experience to mentor other people trying to follow their dreams." She pulled back to look at him. "Really? Really? If you want to, no pressure. I would love that." They left the reception in a shower of rose petals, driving to the airport for their honeymoon in Italy. 2 weeks of exploring vineyards and coastal towns, eating pasta and gelato, making love in their hotel room with the windows open to the Mediterranean breeze. "I could get used to this," Natalie said one afternoon, lounging on a beach towel. "We could come back every year if you want." "Can we afford that?" Quinn laughed. "Sweetheart, we could come back every month if we wanted." "I keep forgetting you're obscenely wealthy." "Good. I like that you forget." When they returned home, reality set in quickly. Natalie threw herself into running the shop and helping Quinn with the foundation. They interviewed applicants, awarded grants, and watched small businesses flourish with the right support. It was fulfilling in a way she hadn't expected, being able to help others the way Quinn had helped her. Their first anniversary came quickly. Quinn surprised her by having completely redecorated one of the spare rooms in their penthouse. "It's a greenhouse," he explained, opening the door to reveal walls of windows, grow lights, and shelving for plants. "I know you've been missing having space to experiment with new varieties. Now you can do it at home." She walked through the space, touching the equipment, the soil, the empty pots waiting to be filled. "This must have cost a fortune. Worth every penny to see that look on your face." She turned and kissed him hard. "I love you so much. Love you too." That night, as they lay in bed, Natalie brought up something they'd been dancing around for months. "I think I want to start trying," she said quietly. "Trying for what? A baby?" Quinn went very still beside her. Yeah, I mean, if you want to. I know we haven't really talked about it seriously." He rolled over to face her, his expression intense. "I want that. Want a family with you. Want to see you pregnant with our child. Want to hold our baby. Want to raise them together." "Then let's do it." They started trying immediately, but it took 6 months before the pregnancy test finally showed 2 lines. Natalie stared at it in disbelief, then ran to show Quinn, who was in his home office working. "We're pregnant," she said, thrusting the test at him. He looked at it, then at her, then back at the test. "We're pregnant. We're pregnant." He swept her into his arms, spinning her around, both of them laughing and crying at the same time. "We're having a baby. We're having a baby." The pregnancy was relatively easy, though Natalie's ankles swelled, and she developed an aversion to the smell of lilies, which was problematic given her job. Quinn was attentive to the point of being overbearing, constantly asking if she needed anything, if she was comfortable, if the baby was moving. "I'm pregnant, not dying," she teased him. "I know, but you're carrying the most precious thing in the world. You're sweet. Annoying, but sweet." They found out at the 20-week ultrasound that they were having a girl. Quinn cried openly in the doctor's office, not caring who saw. They started planning the nursery immediately, arguing good-naturedly about color schemes and furniture. "What about names?" Quinn asked one night. "I was thinking maybe Rose," Natalie said. "For your mother and for how we met." He looked at her with such love that she felt her heart might burst. "Rose Dawson, that's perfect. I was hoping you'd think so." Rose entered the world on a snowy February morning after 12 hours of labor. She had Quinn's eyes and Natalie's nose and a full head of dark hair. Quinn held her with trembling hands, looking at her like she was the most miraculous thing he'd ever seen. "She's perfect," he whispered. "She is," Natalie agreed, exhausted but happy. "Thank you. Thank you for her, for our family, for everything. Thank you for coming into my shop that day asking for a rose," he laughed. "Best decision I ever made. Adjusting to life with a baby was hard. Rose was colicky and didn't sleep well those first few months." Natalie felt touched out and exhausted, and Quinn was juggling work with trying to help at home. They snapped at each other over small things, both running on too little sleep, but they worked through it. Quinn took paternity leave, something his company had never really done before but that he instituted as policy for everyone. They hired a night nurse for a few weeks to help them get rest. They leaned on each other, remembered why they fell in love, and slowly found their rhythm. By the time Rose was 6 months old, things had settled into a new normal. Natalie went back to work part-time, bringing Rose to the shop with her. Quinn reduced his hours, determined not to be an absentee father. They had family dinners, weekend outings to the park, bedtime routines that became sacred. On Rose's first birthday, they took her to the cemetery to visit Quinn's mother's grave. Natalie held their daughter while Quinn placed a red rose on the headstone, as he did every Tuesday. "She would have loved her," Natalie said softly. "She would have loved both of you." He touched the headstone gently. "I wish you were here, Mom. Wish you could meet my girls. But I think you'd be proud of what we've built, of the family we're creating, of the life we're living." They stayed for a few more minutes, then headed home to Rose's birthday party. It was small, just family and close friends, but it was perfect. Rose smashed her cake with delighted abandon, getting frosting everywhere. Quinn took 1,000 photos, and Natalie laughed until her sides hurt. That night, after Rose was asleep and the mess was cleaned up, they collapsed on the couch together. "Good day?" Quinn asked. "The best. Think we should do it again, have another party, eventually?" "I meant have another baby." She looked at him, surprised. "Really, I love being a dad. Love our family, and Rose needs a sibling to torment. I don't know if I can handle pregnancy again so soon. No rush, just putting it out there." She snuggled closer to him. "Ask me again in a year." A year later, she was pregnant again. Another girl who they named Iris. Then, 2 years after that, came their surprise baby, a boy they named Henry. Their penthouse became a cheerful chaos of toys and laughter and children's voices. Natalie eventually stepped back from day-to-day operations at the shop, bringing in a manager while she focused on the foundation and raising their kids. Quinn continued to work but with better boundaries, making sure he was home for dinner every night and never missing important moments. They moved to a larger place when Henry was born, a townhouse with a backyard where the kids could play. It wasn't as fancy as the penthouse, but it felt more like home. Quinn planted a rose garden in the backyard, tending it carefully every weekend. On their 10th wedding anniversary, they renewed their vows in that backyard, surrounded by roses and their children. Rose was 9, Iris was 7, and Henry was 5. They were loud and messy and perfect. 10 years, Quinn said during his vows. 10 years of loving you and it still doesn't feel like enough. I want 10 more, 100 more. Forever. Forever sounds good, Natalie agreed. They kissed while their kids made gagging noises and everyone laughed. That evening, after the kids were in bed, they sat in the rose garden with glasses of wine. "You ever regret it?" Natalie asked. "Choosing this life with me instead of something easier?" "Not for a single second. This is the life I always wanted, even when I didn't know it existed. You gave me that. You and our kids, this home, this family. I wouldn't trade it for anything. Even if I made you give up the penthouse, especially because you made me give up the penthouse. This is real, Natalie. This is what matters." Years passed in a beautiful blur. Rose grew tall and graceful, developing her mother's love of plants and her father's business sense. She talked about studying environmental science, maybe working with the foundation someday. Iris was dramatic and creative, always putting on plays and concerts for the family. Henry was quiet but observant, preferring books to sports but with a wicked sense of humor. Quinn's hair started graying at the temples. Natalie found laugh lines around her eyes. They grew older together, comfortable in their love, secure in their choices. On their 20th anniversary, Quinn surprised her with a trip back to Italy, just the two of them. The kids stayed with Natalie's parents, old enough now to handle a week without them. 20 years, Natalie mused as they walked through the same coastal town they'd visited on their honeymoon. That's gone by fast. It has. Best 20 years of my life, though. Even the terrible 2s times 3, even that, maybe especially that. They had dinner at a small restaurant overlooking the ocean. Quinn reached across the table and took her hand. "I have something to tell you," he said. "That sounds ominous." "It's not, I promise. I've been thinking about the company and I've decided to step back, make my CFO the CEO, transition to more of a chairman role. I want more time with you, with the kids before they're grown and gone." "Quinn, you don't have to do that for me. I'm doing it for us, for the life we built. The company will be fine without me running day-to-day operations, and I want to spend my days doing what matters, working with the foundation, traveling with you, being present." She squeezed his hand. "I think that sounds wonderful." The transition happened over the next year. Quinn found freedom in letting go, in trusting others to run what he'd built. He spent more time with the foundation, more time at home, more time just living. They traveled, explored new hobbies, reconnected as a couple now that the kids were more independent. Rose graduated high school at the top of her class, heading to college with a full scholarship despite not needing it financially. Iris followed 2 years later, choosing to study theater. Henry talked about becoming a teacher, wanting to make a difference in young people's lives. On the day they dropped Rose off at college, both Quinn and Natalie cried in the car on the way home. "When did she get so grown up?" Natalie asked through her tears. "I don't know. Feels like yesterday she was smashing her first birthday cake. We're not losing her, though. She's just starting her own adventure. I know. Doesn't make it easier." They still had Iris and Henry at home, but the house felt emptier. They adjusted, finding new rhythms, new ways to connect as a couple and as a family. Every Tuesday, without fail, Quinn still brought a red rose to his mother's grave. Sometimes Natalie went with him. Sometimes the kids did. Sometimes he went alone. But the tradition never wavered, a constant thread through their changing lives. On their 25th anniversary, their kids threw them a surprise party. Rose came home from college, Iris took time off from her theater internship, and Henry orchestrated the whole thing with surprising skill. The backyard was filled with friends and family, faces from every chapter of their lives. Mrs. Chen was there, now in her 90s but still sharp as ever. She pulled Natalie aside at one point. "I knew," she said simply. "That first day he came into the shop. I knew he was going to change your life. You did not. I did. I've been doing this long enough to recognize when destiny walks through the door. I don't believe in destiny, don't you?" "Then what do you call it when a billionaire walks into a flower shop and falls in love with the girl behind the counter?" Natalie smiled. "I call it the luckiest day of my life." Quinn found her after Mrs. Chen wandered off to talk to other guests. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "Happy anniversary," he murmured. "Happy anniversary. 25 years, half my life. The better half, I hope." Without question. He turned her to face him. "I love you, Natalie Dawson. Love you more today than the day we married, which I didn't think was possible. I love you too, forever and always." They danced in the rose garden while their kids and friends watched, lost in each other and the life they'd built. The setting sun painted everything golden, and in that moment, Natalie thought about the girl she'd been at 23, working in a flower shop and dreaming small dreams. She never could have imagined this life, this love, this family. But sometimes the best things in life are the ones you never see coming. Sometimes all it takes is a man walking into a flower shop, asking for a single red rose, and everything changes. Sometimes love finds you when you're not looking for it, when you're just living your life and being yourself. Sometimes the greatest adventures start with the smallest moments. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, those moments turn into forever. Years later, when Rose was married with children of her own, she asked her father about the roses. They were at the cemetery, 3 generations now visiting the grave of a woman most of them had never met. "Why roses, Dad?" Rose asked, holding her own daughter's hand. "Why every single Tuesday for all these years?" Quinn looked at the headstone, then at his daughter, then at his granddaughter. "Because your grandmother loved them, and because it was a rose that brought me to your mother. That single purchase changed everything. So every Tuesday I remember. I honor what was lost and celebrate what was found. I think your grandmother would have liked that." "Tell me again how you and Mom met," Rose's daughter asked. Quinn smiled, the same smile he'd given Natalie all those years ago in the flower shop. "Your grandmother worked at a flower shop," he began, "and I bought a single rose every day." "Every Tuesday," Natalie corrected, walking up behind them with the rest of their family. Even now, decades later, she still took his breath away. "Every Tuesday," Quinn agreed, pulling her close. "Best purchase I ever made." Their granddaughter looked confused. "But Grandpa, you didn't buy Grandma." "No," Natalie said, ruffling the child's hair. "But that rose led him to me, and I led him to happiness. And together we built all of this." She gestured to their family, gathered around them. 3 children, 2 sons-in-law and a daughter-in-law, 5 grandchildren so far, and more family than they could have imagined when they started. "The best things in life can't be bought," Quinn added. "But sometimes they can be found in the most unexpected places. Like a flower shop on a Tuesday morning." He placed his rose on his mother's grave, as he had done for over 30 years now. Natalie stood beside him. their children and grandchildren around them, and thought about love and loss and the beautiful, complicated, wonderful journey that had brought them here. It had started with a single rose. It had become a lifetime of love. And standing there in the cemetery on a Tuesday afternoon, surrounded by everyone who mattered, Natalie knew she wouldn't change a single thing. Every choice, every challenge, every moment had led them here, to this family, this love, this life. And it was more than she ever could have dreamed.